Right, hey guys, and welcome back. I want to talk to you about Nope. So this is a film that I just finally ended up watching, and wow, I have to say, this is a really nice sci-fi film for sure. Horror, not really, but yes, it has elements of horror, but it's not that scary entirely of a film. But the concept of it and the idea of it was actually really interesting and was very enticing. And I really liked the way Jordan Peele took this film, just in the sense that there are so many layers to the story that he's trying to tell. And the main, like the core of the story that I feel is really showing is all about sort of this glorification of celebrities and Hollywood and filmmaking. And I think that was the key point that this film was trying to convey. So there's a lot of elements in here where there are people who are trying to achieve fame and fortune, which is the American dream, the Hollywood dream, that sort of thing. And so you see a lot of people in this film trying to get themselves involved in this sort of phenomenon that's happening, and they want to be a part of it because they want to be able to use it to somehow gain glory and fortune. So that's I feel the real message that's trying to come through this. But the way it's delivered is really unique in the sense where the story is about this UFO that is sort of flying around a ranch, which is where the story takes place. And this ranch is owned by, what do you call this? Oops, let me just go a little bit too far there. Um, O.J. Haywood, right? So I forgot what it stands for, Otis something. But anyway, O.J. Haywood and his father was the one that was, what do you call this, handling this ranch. And the father dies from a coin sort of dropping from the sky and going right into his eye, and he basically gets shot down by this coin that's falling down at high velocity, and he ends up dying. So OJ is left to take care of the ranch by himself. He does have a sister, Emerald, and she's sort of this free spirit that has her own goals, wants to be some sort of a famous celebrity like character. So she tries to do, she gets into a lot of things. She's trying to do, she mentions that she's into, singing, into businesses, into acting, into all sorts of other media content, basically. That I believe is all just her, attempts of trying to get into this sort of fortune and fame of Hollywood. And so OJ is sort of holding down the ranch, and how things are. And Emerald is just like, she's a good sister in the sense where she's always there for him and helps him out. And she does a lot of the talking because OJ is not very good of a talker. He doesn't really know how to present himself and the business that his father used to run. So what are they doing at this ranch? Well, essentially they were all people who used to use their horses in the ranch, for filmmaking. And so they talk about how one of the first motion pictures ever made was about this stop motion, a horse being rode on. And apparently, the first person to do it was, a black stuntman and, a black actor as well, of course. And so he was the first person to ride a horse, and that sort of, kicks into the pride of these African Americans being involved in cinemas from such an early time. But I mean, I think that's just an interesting fact to point out, considering the history they have in America. But it's not really important to me because I feel that, um, you know, the whole point of avoiding racism starts with you not making a race-based point. If you guys understand what I mean. So I'm not saying that it's not it's an interesting fact to point out, but I feel that it really will achieve nothing at this time and age other than just remind us of, the cruel history, which is what racism is. And of course, it's not all in history. There's still a lot of it existing today. And I feel the best way to abolish it is not look at it as a race-based thing. Regardless, it's an ongoing issue, so I think pointing it out was just a cool little factor. But it moves on where, he's trying to sell his horses for a Hollywood business. Doesn't really work out in their favor because they lose control of one of the horses, and it sort of kicks one of the staff members. And even in that very scene where he does take the horse to sort of do a little bit of shooting, I believe the horse was being scanned at some kind of green screen, and I'm not sure if they were actually going to use that horse to have the actress ride on it, or they were just setting it up to be sort of mapped into a 3D model so that they could be used to create a CGI horse. Because that's what Hollywood does these days, right? They don't want to show any forms of animals being misused or cruelly used, which means that there's no reason for stunt animals to exist anymore, essentially, right? All animals are either in captivity for poultry, resources, or they are left in the wilderness as some sort of a wild animal that they're trying to preserve. But there's no actual animals being trained for filmmaking because they feel that all of that is part of animal cruelty, and thus things like horse training and horse riding and a lot of other animals in training are all basically becoming extinct. So that's an interesting factor. So one of the things that was the core part of the backstory of these characters. So there's this UFO spotted at the ranch, and it starts off with this UFO sort of raining down some trash, and one of it is the coin that kills his father. And later on, it turns out this UFO is going to continue to cause problems in the area. It sucks up horses, it sucks up people at a nearby, like within a nearby town. But it's not able to suck anyone who is in a house. It's not that powerful to the point where it's able to suck people up out of houses. They have to be in the open, and so horses or people in the open do get sucked up by this thing. And the idea of this UFO is that initially they believe that people are being abducted, and they go to all the regular theories of what UFOs are, which is, they're controlled by aliens, and these aliens are abducting people to do research on them, all these sorts of speculations. But turns out this UFO is actually a living creature. That's right. It is actually some sort of a creature that is in the shape of a flying saucer in the sky, and it actually has an alternate form. When it lands on the ground, it can actually morph itself into some sort of a large balloon jellyfish. So it is a huge jellyfish-like creature, and it's very interesting in the sense where it has a very unique balloon-like design, but it's not, what do you call this, so basic. It's actually very complex in the sense where it emits this sort of electromagnetic frequency that shuts off any electronic object. And so they find it very difficult to try to get it on camera, and so they finally approach this, this sort of what do you call this, classic filmmaker who is played by Michael Wincott, which is Antlers Holst. And they need Holst's help because Holst is actually using an old film recorder, which allows him to just crank his way to to motion capture the footage of this alien, and that's how they try to capture it. It doesn't really work in their favor, and this creature just end up wreaking havoc. And also, there's this other guy who works in like some sort of electronics store where they buy some CCTV to try to get footage of the animal. So he's, that guy is Angel Torres, and Angel Torres, he sort of what do you call this, is always with them, helping them out. But I think most of the film is carried by Daniel Kaluuya's OJ. He's really the core of this film. We also get a cool little, sort of a minor role by Steven Yeun from what do you call this, The Walking Dead. He plays this guy called Ricky Jukebug, and he has his own interesting story where he was a child actor, a child star, and he had this chimp that he used to have a TV show with. And there was one day that they apparently have like multiple chimps um, throughout his show. But one of the chimp apparently snaps when they mention something about the jungle, and the chimp actually ends up killing some people on set, and a lot of people get wounded, and the chimp has to get put down, so they shoot the chimp. So a lot of people don't really know the true story behind it, but there's apparently some alternate, more acceptable version of the story being told by Hollywood, and so he sort of is living off that original fame and is continued to be a sort of a successful businessman while hiding the dark past and the truth that is, that chimp, that insane chimp was something he had to witness and live with, and it's a part of a really scary and dark history. So yeah, it's interesting to point out that all of the fact that Hollywood covers up things. You have TMZ, some guy from TMZ coming to get in on the fame of trying to record this UFO creature. because apparently he tried to look it up on Google Maps, and this place has some sort of electromagnetic frequency that prevents the satellite from capturing any footage. I'm not sure how that would work. I think a satellite that's that far away should still be able to capture footage. Regardless, it's something that he mentions. Um, so that is interesting. But yeah, this UFO turns out to be some sort of an alien creature that comes down and hunts all these people. And so finally, the way that they stop this alien creature is um, OJ's sister Emerald, sort of escapes the creature while OJ distracts it, and Emerald goes to this sort of a fair. It's like a fun fair that is centered in the town, and over there there's like a well where there's this kind of a photo where if you look into the well, you look from up into down into the well. There's a camera down there that'll take a photo of you, so it gives this nice photo of people looking down. So she used the camera in that well to finally take photos of this alien as it's flying over their little town looking for her, and it's being distracted by a large balloon. It's like a hot air balloon or something. Not really a hot air, sorry. It's just a giant helium balloon, basically, that goes up. So she sends the balloon up to distract it, and she manages to get photos of it. And that creature eats that giant helium balloon, and all of a sudden explodes and sort of just I don't know, it sort of like dies in the sky. They don't really show what happens to it after it dies. They don't show what happens to the body that it has that, is just remaining floating in the sky because it's no longer able to transform back to its UFO form. So it's in sort of this like dead jellyfish-ish form that is just hovering in the sky. So there's really no investigation involved as to, by any government organization or any covert organization. Like really, no one's been doing research on this creature that's been living in the skies. So yes, it really feels like it's a very small world and all centered about the story of just this ranch and this people revolving around it and trying to chase after the Hollywood dream. And yeah, it's very basic and very down to that. I don't even know if these people are living in some sort of a post-apocalyptic era because they don't really show anything else besides the ranch and these people living there. There's not really much of the world around them. So yeah, I felt that the ending was really flat and like we get it, you want to prove the point of the Hollywood story, but it's very much centered around the idea of this UFO and this horror story, this sci-fi story that you're trying to create. So I felt that it was really disappointing in the sense that it didn't really show us enough in terms of how they would actually defeat the creature, and it just eating some helium balloon and sort of I don't know passing out or dying felt really underwhelming. And also, there being no real investigation or no real people looking into this besides these people living in the ranch also felt really underwhelming. And also they never gave us any backstory about where this creature could have come from. They never didn't even show us the potential of the fact that this is just maybe one creature that's living up there, and there could be many others. So there's really like it doesn't. There's no continuity in terms of the idea or the lore or the story, and the core message of people chasing fame in Hollywood is not unusual. Everyone knows that. Everyone does that on a daily basis. So I feel like the only like that's not a really true, I mean, new story for us, right? So I felt like the only new and interesting thing is the concept that this UFO is some sort of a creature, and I feel like that's also a story that is sort of like discussed in some Reddit forum somewhere, I'm sure. It's not entirely new, but regardless, it's very interesting. I like the concept of it, but yeah, I felt the story was still pretty basic, not really too much interesting things going on, and so I would want to rate this film a 4 out of 10. I really want to give it a 3 because I feel that it could have been better, but I think a 4 is fair enough because it's not that bad of a story in the sense where it introduces this unique idea, it has a cool little jellyfish design, but it doesn't amount to much. And the concept of the layered storytelling, which is that they want to tell you about the Hollywood story, they want to tell you about this alien story, they want to tell about this child star who's growing up. There's a lot of things it's trying to achieve, but I feel that none of it is seriously being told because they all sort of don't really end up um, having a very solid finale or conclusion or something epic to turn out of this sci-fi film. And as for weather, it is really scary. It is eerie in the sense where when this alien sucks up people, you can hear them screaming as it's flying over, a certain area. And when it rains down whatever is eaten up, whatever is churned up, you see blood pouring out of it and all that weird stuff going on. But it just seems strange when people say like, "Oh, we couldn't get a photo of it from the satellite, so we had to come in person to take it." That doesn't really make sense because if they could get it on a regular camera, like a regular old school camera, it's because the frequency is not affecting it. But if you're taking, a photo of it from really far away, I'm sure it doesn't matter what kind of camera you're using because the electromagnetic frequency, uh, you know, will not disrupt you because you're really just very far away. So kind of strange, and also the idea that they had where when they initially try to lock it down, they could see it as a cloud in the sky that and the cloud just doesn't move while all the rest of the clouds move. It just seems obvious that it's just chilling there while these people are have been staring at some random cloud that's just in the same place. But because it hasn't been there, like in this story, it only arrives at the ranch like 6 months within a 6 month timeline, and during that time is when the father gets killed. So obviously before that it was somewhere else. So they could have shown where like someone else perhaps came to this area hunting for it or looking for it, and they have some kind of backstory to know what it is. But it all comes down to the theories made up by this guy who runs a ranch with a bunch of horses. And his idea is that if it's an animal, not looking at it means it will not attack you. So just keep your head down. But that doesn't really make sense either because it does eventually have to feed, and I don't think it really cares whether you look up at it because if it's hungry, it's going to kill you regardless. And it can't really suck anyone up if they're in some kind of a car or a house because it seems like it doesn't like really suck up any vehicles or any buildings. It's not that powerful. But at the same time, dying to some helium balloon felt really underwhelming, and yeah, kind of sad. You know what? I'll actually give it a three. Reason being because I don't think I would ever want to rewatch this film. It has a really cool concept, this alien creature that's in the sky and the Hollywood story that's been told too many times. But other than that, it's nothing too interesting in the sense where once you know it, so what? You know, that's not too much of lore to discuss because I'm sure there's Reddit forums out there with way better ideas on what could be living in the skies among us, and how people would have been tracking things like these for years, even before they would show up in some random ranch and start feeding on things, because if it is such a huge creature that has to feed on stuff, it would have left a trail of dead bodies, blood, fallen objects, keys, or whatever that's falling from the sky. That the way his father died, it would have just been recorded by so many other people as well. And since this is the modern world where they are having CCTVs and cell phones, someone out there would have shared footage and the idea that um, this thing exists out there. So yeah, I'm going to give it a three. I think it's a fair rating in the sense where it has an interesting story, um, but that's about it. The acting, unfortunately, is really underwhelming in the sense where Daniel Kaluuya is a fantastic actor, but because of the role he's playing, he's just this very poker-faced, very calm um, guy who doesn't really talk much, and there's really not much expression out of him. He's just basically just giving these micro expressions of being nervous or worried, and he has this general face throughout. This is his face, all right, throughout the entire film. That's him. There's really nothing else, otherwise. And the dialogues as well are very short and simple. It's very much just telling individual stories. So yeah, it's cool in that sense. But it's not something that you could rewatch. It's not great entertainment. There's not enough lore to the backstory of this mysterious creature who is the star of the show. This alien is the star, and there's not enough things going on for it. There's also the strange, logic of not being able to record it from the satellites, or no one else knows about it or spoken about it before. And all of a sudden TMZ can show up saying that this guy comes on a bike apparently from TMZ, and he's like, we've been trying to look at this location on the satellite and we couldn't really see it, and it's just one guy showing up on a bike, which is really strange. Like if there really is such a thing, I'm sure hundreds of people will be searching for this around the world. And even these people who are living at the ranch who were buying all these CCTVs and setting up and trying to look for it, trying to figure it out. They didn't even do any research on it on the internet, which is really strange. I'm not sure why they wouldn't want to just look up whether people have discussed about this thing before, whether there are creatures in the sky, whether there's a way to fight it or to stop it. And it dying from the helium balloon, I felt was the stupidest thing I've seen because um, it's such a powerful creature in the sense that it can suck up these sort of like a heavy horse statue which is used for like some kind of decoration. It can suck up like hundreds of metal objects, coins, and little stuff. Sucks up a lot of human beings, but dies to a helium balloon. I'm not sure is helium even its weakness because it lives in the skies. I'm sure it sucks up all kinds of air while it's up there and stuff. So very strange end as well to the story. So it is what it is, but it's interesting concept nonetheless. But I wouldn't really recommend this to anyone. It's kind of boring for the most part as a horror or sci-fi-ish story. At least for me, it is. So if you guys enjoyed it, that's great. I think I really liked the concept. I just felt the execution was poor. And yeah, the story basically is carried by Daniel Kaluuya, and Keke Palmer also does a decent job as his sister. But all the other side characters are really underwhelming. They don't really do much. So the real star of the show comes down to this um, alien, and turns out the alien itself is it has a great cool form in the final. Like when it comes down to the ground, it actually can transform into this jellyfish-like form. And there's really no idea like what's the point of it transforming, right? Like, okay, it's cool. It looks cool that this flat dish saucer can suddenly turn into this jellyfish balloon. But what has it achieved? What does it tell in the story? We don't really know anything about it, what it means, what's the idea, whether it's representing something. Maybe it is. I don't know. I can't tell. There's really nothing. The characters don't talk about it at all. They're just being quiet and terrified most of the time. So we don't really know what's the point of it even transforming towards the very end. They could have just kept it in the flying saucer form, and it wouldn't have made any difference. At least that's the way I see it. So yeah, anyway, that's it from me for this one. Take care, guys.